Welcome everyone to what we hope will be many British Council Global Skills Spotlight events. Through our Global Skills Spotlight newsletter, our blogs and events, we hope to share learning and stimulate debate amongst a global community of policymakers and those interested in policy. So if you haven't signed up for our policy newsletter yet, please do. At these events, we hope we'll focus on a specific topic and use it to share the experiences and insights from our work and the work of others in the UK and around the world. We don't really want them to be lectures, so please contribute as much as you can. Obviously, there's the limits of a chat function, but please do share comments and any links to any resources that you think might be relevant for others to see. We have a couple of presentations, but there will be still plenty of time for discussion at the end, so please do post questions for the panel, but also for others who are participating. We'll be recording the session and it will be available on the Global Skills Spotlight section of our website, so for those of you who missed it or think it was such a great session you want to share it with others, you'll be able to share that with other people that you know. So moving on, that's a bit about the sort of our first and what we hope to do, but moving on to today. Today we thought we'd put the spotlight on the important role of regions can have in enabling effective skills development. For those of you who were fortunate or unfortunate enough to read my blog that accompanies this event, you'll see that I personally believe local and regional actions are some of the most powerful ways of addressing the skills challenges that we currently face, and particularly at this very terrible point in our history. We also know through our work and the research we did, the British Council did in 2017, that a number of countries are currently introducing or enhancing the role of regions in their skills development. Today is therefore an opportunity to share some of the progress and the experiences across the world, and we have two guests to help us do that. We have Ali Mizani, who's a British Council colleague from Morocco, who's working on our EU-funded project in Morocco, which is helping to support the regionalisation of TVET planning, and he'll go into a bit more detail about what's been going on there and the objectives that Morocco are trying to achieve. And then we have Sinead Campbell from Skills Development Scotland, who will share her experience of leading their work in the islands of Scotland. She'll share the great work they're doing, but also a more rural perspective on regional skills development, which is often not really talked about much. There's lots of focus on urban development and urban regional development, but not so much the rural aspects of it. So we hope to have some insights from that perspective. So without further delay, let me hand over to Ali, who's going to provide some insights into the regionalisation of Morocco. Ali, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Chris. So happy to be among you this morning. As Chris said, I'm Ali Mizani from Morocco, British Council Morocco, and I'll be presenting like a brief, spotlight about the regionalization improvements in Morocco. But first, I would like to start pointing that Morocco has put regionalization at the heart of its economic development model. I mean, regions are expected to be to become more like a local government, wielding the kind of powers that enable them to shape their destiny, and also trying to rally all the stakeholders in the regions around one common goal. For the regionalization in Morocco, it has gone through different phases. So I wouldn't go into detail, but the most recent reform that was introduced is the advanced regionalization reform in Morocco, where it was adopted in 2015 and has led to redefinition of the relationship between the central government and the newly elected regions. which has like more like exclusive and shared and transferred competences and financial resources. And as you see, like in the map, I mean, we have like 12 regions in the country. So so the implementation of this advanced regionalization is really, I would say, an opportunity and a challenge for Morocco, because it demonstrates the country's will in to reach a more inclusive and sustainable socioeconomic development. Of course, the advanced regionalization, it's a whole country strategy, but so education and vocational and TVET is part of this strategy. And the TVET strategy and key policy directives in Morocco is kind of divided between the three main stakeholders or policy makers in decision making in TVET in Morocco. First, I would mention the strategic vision of education reform that introduced by the Higher Council of Education and Training Research, where there's a focus on establishing a territorial governance system in anticipation of implementation of advanced regionalization. And also giving the institution its full autonomy and considering it as the central pivot of the educational system. And also consolidating decentralization and orienting governance toward advanced regionalization. So this is like the council's strategy that has like a clear definition of what is meant by the regionalization of the governance of vocational education in Morocco. And also we have the national strategy for vocation and training that is piloted by the ministry and by the Department of Vocational Education, which is part of the Ministry of Education, that clearly states that implication of the region in the identification of needs and development of a training program is really, really important. And also the public, private and region partnership, because it is really important to have that partnership between the public and private sector, and also the implication of the local governments. I mean, it's really important in the strategy. And also the third point is to enhance the regional coordination between all TVET stakeholders. And here I would like to shortly mention the project we are working on, which is like an EU-funded project, which falls in the same same thing, which is trying to enhance the coordination between all stakeholders in the region. So to have like a regional governance model to define all the needs, and also to coordinate the planning, the implementation, and the evaluation of the TVET programs in each region of Morocco. So we have been working in two pilot regions, which is Tanger, Tétouan, El Hoceima, and Oriental. So this is just part of the supporting the national strategy. And recently, in 2019, there's the roadmap for development of TVET, which is also has a lot of focus on regional structures that will support the strategy. So it's called like cities of trade and skills, which has like a focus on training in line with each regional potential and integrated also in the regional ecosystem. So each region has its own different characteristics. So you cannot have like one fit for all. I mean, it has to be really focused on the needs of the region. And also there's like the multi-sectorial, multi-affectional and shared approach. So it's really important to have different sectors, because in Morocco we have these strategies. We also for vocational education. We also have sectorial strategies, so it's really important to find the link between these strategies for the benefit of the regions. Also, in this roadmap, there's like the housing sector, trying to house sectors in each region with high employment potential in these regions. Of course, this is like it's just a glimpse of what's really each stakeholder, I mean, or policymaker in Morocco that working on vocational education is trying to put into practice this advanced regionalization in its policies. And it's also an opportunity, and also there's a challenge. Like you see, there's kind of different stakeholders, so the coordination is really important between all this partners. For this strategies and key policies, it's really a great opportunity for the regions, because here it shows a lot of positive things that came out of the years. I mean, because so far the last few years there was some positive outcome that came out of it. That can be summarized in this point here. For example, there's like the region and sector-based strategies to make the regions more attractive and competitive. Here, I mean, we have some examples of some regions that really benefited from this directives to focus more on regions, give it more power and more autonomy, is making it more attractive to foreign investments, because Morocco, we have some regions that really benefited from this strategy. Like, for example, in automotive industry in Tangier, Chitwan, and Hoceima, and also in Rabat, Kenitra, and also we have regions in the south who had like who were able to be really attractive in renewable energy. Also, another opportunity that was really important for regions is like giving local authorities the ability to define and implement a coherent strategy in terms of planning, organization, management of TVET sector here, because we, I mean, there was a lot of issues agreeing on what is the needs of each regions. I mean, because we used to be all these needs were defined at the central level, and here, I mean, the regions cannot really find the match to the needs, and so there was really important to get the involvement of all stakeholders, from the private sector, from the local government. I mean, the representative of each ministry, and agree on this plan. And of course, here, I mean, I would like to mention the regional development plan that was also played an important role in defining all these opportunities to improve the local governance of the vocational education. There's the region also have greater competencies than other and subnational governments in terms of economic development, as well the design and implementation of regional planning schemes. So it all goes back to the regional development plan, and how the involvement of all stakeholders is the key to reach, I mean, to achieve this the results really looked after for the strategy. Also, for this strengthening the multi-level governance to enable the region and economic actors to play a role in defining the training needs at the regional level. So this strategy, I mean, it was really important to find this coordination of all the actors. I mean, and also in defining the needs and also the kind of evaluating what's really existing and how to make how to build on that and make it better. Also, to contribute to the implementation of a national sector and support development of the region. Development of the region is really important. It's a top priority for the government of Morocco. The government of Morocco wants each region to be empowered, to have its own autonomy in making decisions. I mean, in all different sectors. But for vocational education, it's really important because I mean, vocational education has been like a top priority also for the King of Morocco and also for the government's strategies in the last few years as a vector for the economic development. This is all great opportunities for the regions of Morocco, but I mean, so far there were like a considerable amounts of improvement, but still we still have to meet some expectations that were defined in the beginning of this reform. So some of the things that maybe can be improved is like the diversity of the actors in the management of the vocational education system and the implementation of public policy. As you saw earlier, different strategies, different actors make things a little bit more challenging, and agreeing on things, agreeing on how things should be done, and agreeing on the needs. It's one of the challenges that this strategy is facing. Also, there's a need to establish a high-level multi-sectorial or multi-level coordination to conduct an integrated territorial development policies based on shared indicators, promotion of coherence, and avoiding fragmentation. Again, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done as far as trying to have like coordination and at every level, because we had some issues. I mean, with maybe I would say challenges in implementation our projects, especially on the level of implication of different sectors. Also different actors, because here different level, because we have the region, like the elected region, and also there's like the local government that implement all the government strategies. So it's really important to find the link and also have to build like a communication and coordination foundation for any work in different sectors, including vocational education. Also, we have one of the challenges is in this regionalization is there's a lot of focus on major cities. I mean, we had different examples where the focus is always on cities, because I'm sure they have more competitiveness, they have all the structures ready. I mean, for any kind of investments, but still there is a need to support the implementation of emerging rural areas and to strengthen the urban and rural linkages. So it's one of the things that has to be improved within the implementation of the strategy. Also, ensure the participation of all regions of regional partners. Again, here we have one of the challenges is getting getting the involvement of the private sector. Private sector is really important partner in in the coordination for the local governance for vocational education, especially in providing all the needs. And the thing is, like in Morocco, the economic system of Morocco is characterized by the majority of the informal sector. It's like about 80% is informal sector, and there's only less than 20% is formal sector. And the employer organizations is only represented by the formal sector, which is like less than 20%, and they don't have the capacity to provide the information and the data needed for the for defining all the needs, and also building on that to create or to plan for new TVET institutions or TVET programs. So one of the things that I would like to mention is all the roles of responsibility that are not clearly defined. So it's really important that all the partners or the regional members define who is doing what, and especially we had an issue about like who will be piloting this partnership, this regional partnership. There is a need, and since there is no law, no legislative guidance to this, there's always going to be some issues about who will be leading, who will be representing each partner. So the last thing I would like also to mention is the complexity of the funding model. I mean, and the disposal of decision-making centers for resources allocation make the planning task, coordination, and monitoring difficult and often ineffective. I mean, there is a lot of directives with regards to all different aspects of regionalization, but the funding lacks the clarity because it's still concentrated at the central level. I mean, these regions, there's a lot of efforts to get to have more participative approach towards funding from the region, from different funds, but for the government's contribution, there's still more improvement to be done in order for the regions to achieve their potential. All right, well, thank you so much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Ali. That was great. Thank you very much. I mean, for me, there was some really key points brought out there that illustrated by your presentation. A couple of the things that strike me was a very clear articulation of why Morocco wanted to regionalise and why regions are not more local levels. There was sub-regional government, but why regions are important. But obviously, it's still. I'm correct in thinking that it's still very early days in Morocco in terms of the regionalisation process, and it has to be seen as it's not something that can take place instantly. And one of the challenges is we know that if at a national level, TVET is it can be fragmented and not coordinated amongst different ministries and different agencies. And obviously, one of the challenges is not to then duplicate that at a regional level, but actually to use the regional partnership engagement to be more efficient and more effective. So those are the things. And then I thought the important thing that you brought out, which I hadn't really thought about really, was about the regions and link between regions and rurals. So because regions are generally large areas, every region is going to include a rural area, whether that's predominantly a rural area or part of, on the outlying of urban areas. And that is something that I think does get forgotten about quite a lot by policymakers. The focus is on urban areas where obviously many people live and where lots of the economic activity is, but not necessarily to help all. So I thought there were lots of interesting points that we can perhaps discuss a bit further later on.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the only other thing to ask was really about the number of regions and how far Morocco is in the process. Am I right in thinking it's still quite early on in the process in terms of how many regions are progressing on this agenda?
Yes, Chris. Yeah, I mean, we have 12 regions, and we have some pilot regions who made some great improvements, but very few. I mean, very few. I mean, it's basically like the main regions: Tangier, Tétouan, Casablanca. I would say Rabat, Kenitra, and that's basically it. We have 8 more other regions still have a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. For those people who don't know Morocco, those are the main towns, but there's very large rural areas around them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Well, whilst we're talking about rural areas, I think that's ideal way of introducing our next guest. Sinead Campbell, who's Regional Skills Planning Lead for Skills Development Scotland. She will explain who Skills Development Scotland are, but I think it's obvious from the title maybe. And Sinead is going to give some practical illustrations of how powerful regional responses can be. Particularly in the current situation, and obviously from a very rural perspective as well. So over to you, Sinead.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this seminar as well. It's quite a new forum that we're using. It's something that we're getting used to in terms of the day-to-day work. So from a global perspective, really exciting. Thought I'd start off by telling you a little bit about what we do. So obviously, Chris has explained my role is a kind of regional skills planning role, but I've actually changed very recently where I've got much more of a focus on islands, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on. But we are the Skills Development Scotland are the national skills body, and we're really key. We get a lot of our funding actually through from the UK government, but we've got devolved functions in Scotland, and education and skills are part of these devolved functions. So we have some scope in terms of delivering things slightly differently in Scotland and across the region to meet needs. Our focus is mainly around services to people, and so that's making sure that young people make really good subject choices about their future career, that adults actually continue to look at their careers for all their life. We're looking very much at working with businesses so that they're workforce planning all the time, that they're able to recruit the right people with the right skills, that they're looking to the future and how the workplace is going to change and actually what kind of skills they'll need. And ultimately, it's all about supporting the economy. Partnership working is very key to what we do. So we actually work very closely with the enterprise companies, with local authorities. And a lot of our work is about driving skills planning, and that's really going to be based in terms of how we pull together the evidence base about where the opportunities are, what the kind of challenges are, and actually do that piece about planning about how we're going to respond together to actually make sure that the businesses are able to invest and have the right skills, and that we've got the kind of education and skills provision there that supports them. One of the real focus that we've worked as an agency is around work-based learning, and this is really important to island communities where I live as well, because traditionally we lose a lot of our young people. We call it the brain drain. People will move out of our island communities for further and higher education. And so we've started trying to sort of embed that knowledge about work into the school curriculum. So we've got foundation apprenticeships, kind of first year of an apprenticeship, and it actually allows young people to go into local work opportunities and find out more about that. That helps us to meet some of the challenges about people thinking there is no career or progression available in our communities, and also lets them see some of our traditional industries which might not be so attractive in terms of people moving into it. So longer term, and then we're creating pathways so that people can go from foundation apprenticeships in school into modern apprenticeships and into graduate apprenticeships. These are new apprenticeships we've brought in, and it actually encourages people to be working with employers, actually getting paid, but also working towards a degree qualification. So key thing there is about making sure that we've got education and training responding to the needs of the economy. A little bit about the Highlands and Islands. This is a region we've got probably half the landmass of Scotland in the Highlands and Islands, but we've only got 9% of the population. And we've probably the region with the lowest population density in the whole of Europe. We've got 100 inhabited islands and a population of about 490,000 people. But one of our big challenges in the region is that we've got an aging population, and we've got some forecasts there that we might be losing up to 30,000 people that will go out of our workforce just simply as a result of people retiring or outward migration. And so trying to sort of work as partners to address that, to make sure that we're retaining our talent, we're attracting talent is absolutely key. And on top of that, now we've obviously got the kind of unemployment scenarios that we're going to have to deal with around COVID. There you can see some of the forecasts. If it's 10% unemployment, we might be looking to lose about 24,000 people out of the workforce. And we're estimating that up to 40% of them might be under 25 years of age. And we know that the impact of COVID actually is quite significant in our rural areas, simply because of our reliance on things like tourism and food and drink. And we also realise that we might take longer to recover. So absolutely critical that we as partners are working together to address that. As an agency just now, we're looking to respond. I suppose the whole thing about skills planning is that, yes, we must be prepared for the best, know about it and prepared for the opportunities that are coming, but also come together and respond to the worst. And without a doubt, COVID-19 has been quite a challenge for all the agencies. As Skills Development Scotland, we're really keen that it is about making sure that we're supporting, we're informing people around their options, we're providing support around a lot around in using the digital technology. So those that are facing redundancies, working very closely with young people that are maybe more at risk of not making a positive destinations. So focused on that. Also, our apprenticeships being pretty key in terms of our services and in terms of sustaining the population and meeting the needs of the economy. So we've got 4,000 apprentices in the region. And so what we're trying to do now is if they're furloughed, they're not in employment, how do we actually complete their transition plan? So make sure that they actually complete their training. And also funding that's going to be there to encourage employers who maybe might take on an apprentice and allow them to finish their training. And also looking at those that are maybe trying to get into employment just now, which is really difficult when employers aren't sure about the future. So for the youngsters that are saying that they want to work, we're creating a pathway to apprenticeships, and that actually would be a lot more with a training provider or a college, supporting them to develop the kind of work skills that they're going to need, so that as things recover, they're as prepared as possible to go into an apprenticeship. We're looking at individual training accounts, so encouraging people that are maybe facing unemployment or on furlough or unsure about their future to upskill, and a lot of that provision is actually online. And those that are specifically either facing redundancy or have been made redundant, we've got a programme of transition training that's going to be there, to short training courses that would actually allow them to re-enter the workplace as well. So these are the kind of immediate responses that we have, and we've got to be very careful that we align them to other programmes of support that are there from the UK government coming through our benefits agency, for instance. And that is something that, as partners, requires a lot of conversations and a lot of planning. Now, we talked about islands. Obviously the region is quite dispersed. Islands have got even more specific challenges, and the demographics in the islands are quite significant. we've you know, apart from, you know, the fact that we've got a small business base, lots of small businesses, we've got a reliance on some of our traditional, you know, fishing, aquaculture, tourism. We've also got issues around transport, so ferries and flights into the area. Cost of living is very, very high as well, and weather can actually have quite an impact on it. But demographics are probably our biggest challenge. So if I take just, for instance, the Western Isles, there's a forecast there that, you know, dependency rate. So for every 100 workers, we might have 95 people that will be dependent on them by 2040. And that's predominantly in that older age group. We've always had depopulation. So we've got young people leaving the islands for further and higher education, and they don't always return. We've got concerns about access to the workforce. So we've got a, you know, shrinking workforce potentially, and we've embraced that migrant workforce that's come to support our key sectors. What happens post-Brexit is all still to be clarified. And as the population ages, we've got an increased demand in our health and social care sector. And already we're seeing quite a lot of the skills that are actually the jobs that are being advertised are for looking for people with skills like dementia, knowledge of dementia. A decrease in the public sector has had an impact, and that's been reduced workforce, maybe cuts in services, and that all adds to that sense of probably a bit of a lack of confidence in some of the communities. And then, you know, ultimately it comes down to how do we fund, how do we invest in our businesses, in our skills system, and that kind of funding post-Brexit again is still a bit of an unknown quantity, and would be, you know, I suppose our region has benefited in Europe from an Objective 1 status because of its vulnerability, its rurality. We don't have clarity at the moment yet how we prioritise the rural areas, you know, once we're standing on our own 2 feet. The other thing I talked about there was, so we actually support our regions through skills planning processes, but our organisation recognised that the islands are quite unique. They've got unique skills needs, and we need to make very sure that we're actually responding as effectively as possible. So a lot of our programs, a lot of our services are delivered in urban areas where the mainstay of the population, where the mainstay of the business base is. But we're very, very clear that we've actually got to make sure that if it's needed to be tweaked, if it needs to be amended, that we have got the scope to do that, and that's part of my role. And so our charter, we've entered into charter agreements with our island local authorities, but one that's actually more advanced is the one that we have with Cornwall with the Western Isles Island community. And it's a formal agreement really to frame a commitment to working together, to invest and to deliver in a thriving and responsive skills system. It has an action plan, and it's got some key themes in there about how we develop the curriculum in schools, and how that actually responds to, you know, the needs of the business space, how we support our Gaelic language in schools and in the communities and the workplace, how we actually continue to develop our work-based learning to suit the island communities, how we engage with employers, and actually how we work together. And so we've initiated, in many ways, our charter is that initiation around a new act that has recently been brought in Scotland. It's an Island Scotland Act. And again, that means nationally, we have recognised that islands are different. And the big call is out there to all the agencies that are there to support the island communities to make sure that we have island-proofed our services, that they're not disadvantaged because they're rural for something that might work better in urban areas. And that might even relate to how they access training, and also how we support language. We're also working very closely around a single islands partnership. So it's not just about Skills Development Scotland and the local authority. It's very much about our enterprise companies, our language, Bordna Gaelic, and other partners, and trying as much as possible to sort of look at how do we plan together and sort of prioritise services. And that certainly has been evidenced in terms of how we come together and look at delivering the programmes there to support the economy and the public through COVID, but also how we start to plan for that recovery process. So longer term, it's as much as possible, it's trying to sort of create that one-stop shop, and that we're not passing people and communities around from agency to agency. We also recognise that there's very much a need to, it's not just about jobs, it is about all that kind of interrelated, whether it's transport, whether it's a home, and what kind of home that is, and whether it's actually meeting the new environmental regulations and meets sort of an individual's need or a family's need. So we're trying as much as possible to sort of pull that together so that it's our apprenticeship programme, for instance, is if an apprentice actually needs a home, then the local authority will look to support them as much as possible to getting that home. And as I mentioned it earlier on, it is really about creating these pathways. So every pupil in the schools are given an opportunity to do that first year of an apprenticeship in school. And they're also being advised that if they want to leave, when they leave school, if they want to go into a job, we will make sure that there is a job there for them and support them into that job. And we're very much looking at how do we work in terms of a partnership to promote the local employment opportunities so that we retain young people. So as much as possible, we're encouraging people to remain in the communities. And our evidence suggests that young people do want to live in their communities, and families want to live in their communities. But it's that confidence about an expectation that they'll leave, or you have to go away to get on, as well as that bit around retaining our talent. We've got to attract people in so that they see the opportunities that are there. Working very much, with around upskilling and reskilling. We've got £100 million that's going to come into our island communities around a deal that's there to support huge investment in around renewables. We're really at the forefront of that in island communities, and we need to make sure that the workforce is there for that, as well as how technology is changing the workforce and the workplace, and making sure that our traditional businesses are as prepared for that future workforce as possible. So it's not just about the new technologies, the new industries that are coming, it's about supporting our existing industries as well. And key to all this really very much is that bit around skills alignment. And so it's absolutely essential that, one, we've got a good evidence base about where the opportunities are, what the barriers might be. And the second thing is really making sure that all the way from our early years provision through school into our higher and further education, that is aligned and really informed by the needs of the employers. So lovely, pretty significant piece of work, a huge commitment by our organisation. And I suppose what we're saying here is really, there are challenges. There is absolutely no doubt that remote and rural areas have challenges, but there are also huge opportunities, and that is around the future. So we're already, breaking new ground in terms of renewables and wind, wave. We're looking at how we work with the oil and gas sector about that, clean energy that we'll do. We're becoming low sort of test sites for low carbon technology as well. And we're also seeing that through COVID, the rural areas are actually, we've got people actually reassessing where they want to live and how they want to live, how they want to work. And they're actually looking to relocate from the built up urban areas where they're maybe living in confined spaces or smaller homes. And they're exploring the open spaces and the larger properties in rural areas. And key to all of that really is that digital infrastructure, which is being built by the Scottish Government, the UK Government, that's going to allow people to work and to study in rural communities. And we've got a piece of work that's got to be done about making sure that we've got the digital skills there so that communities, individuals, businesses are able to work or live in this technological age, but also work in this technological age. And it is really about, maximising our business development and ensuring career progression is there as well. So on that, I think I'll hold there, and happy to take questions as we move on to that phase. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sinead. That's, that was a fascinating insight into what you're doing in Scotland, and I think for me there are a couple of things to pick up there. One is how a national agency has relied and used more regional and local information to adapt its national programmes to the needs, to the different needs across the country, and how you've managed to do that by still engaging the regional and national, other regional and local organisations. I think you mentioned local councils and enterprise agencies, and just for those people who may not know, the councils are more of cover very local areas, I think, don't they?
Yes, we have about 32 local authorities across Scotland. We've 5 regions, but the agencies have got to work quite often at a local authority level, simply because there are services there that are all aligned, and education and skills is very much part of that general services to the community.
Yeah, and you also mentioned enterprise agencies. I think they've got a geographical remit, haven't they, which is slightly different, and that very much aligns to some of the things Ali was talking about regionalisation and aligning to the economic needs of the area.
Yes, we're putting a great deal of effort in at this particular moment. We probably always work very, very closely with our enterprise colleagues because of the link into business. And we've always had a very good relationship with education departments from our partnership working with local authorities. I think the drive now is that bit about enterprise, the link between enterprise and skills, and bringing our further and higher education into it, so that as much as possible that further and higher education is actually aligned to the needs of the economy as well. Yeah,
and I think we had a question about regionalisation and how regionalisation can help the economic diversification of areas, and I think you covered that to some extent in what you were talking about, some of the programmes that were being developed around energy and other areas. The other thing maybe worth highlighting to people on board is the geographical area of regionalisation. So you talked about the Highlands and the Islands and Scott being a sub-region of Scotland, but then for those people listening carefully, you will hear that whilst education and skills is devolved to Scotland, work supporting what would be the Ministry of Labour's role in many other countries is actually not devolved to Scotland, and so from that perspective you could consider Scotland as a region. If you compare it with, for example, places like India, where you've got states that have got very much a lot of power as Scotland does, but they still have some feed into a national system. So it raises the question of what you mean by a region, I think, for some countries, and what that would cover. And finally, I just wanted to make a plug. You talked about a lot about apprenticeships and how that was core to Scotland's response. And for those people listening, British Council has been doing some work in a number of countries on apprenticeships, and we've developed an apprenticeship benchmarking tool so that countries can assess their apprenticeship systems. So if that's of interest to you, please do visit our website and have a look at that. So that's my quick plug. In terms of questions, I guess I've got a linking to the regional agenda. I mean, you mentioned a number of the elements, but what elements do you think need to be in place for effective regional skills development? I mean, Sinead, do you want to start off with? I mean, you mentioned some of them, I think, in your presentation.
Yes, I think absolutely key to that is really having an effective, strong evidence base about where the opportunities are. So if you've got to be planning to deliver against something. So we've actually put a huge investment into like skills assessments around regions. We also do a lot of specific sectoral analysis, so we can find out about a different sector and the kind of needs and opportunities and challenges that are within that sector. That then can be shared across the different regions, and we can develop responses as partners to that. I think you've also got to have a really good understanding about how are you meeting these kind of skills needs at the moment. So what's your current education system like? What's happening in your schools? What's happening in your colleges? What's happening, you know, day to day in the business workplace where they're actually investing in skills, and then trying to sort of make sure that as much as possible you align that education and skills so that it's meeting the needs of the skills just now, but also has enough knowledge and capacity to change to looking at meeting the needs for the future. And I think the other probably key thing is that bit about making sure that we're making the best use of our funding. So there will be funding with enterprise companies, there'll be funding with local authorities, there'll be funding with skills agencies, there'll be funding in colleges and what, trying to sort of that we work as collectively as possible, sort of using that funding so that it's delivering equipment or people or services, and actually making sure that that's as effective and as efficient as possible as well.
So I think it's very much sort of joining up everything, isn't it? It's not just what we might think about TVET and the TVET institutions, but also the whole gamut of organisations that are working at a regional level.
Yes, I mean, if you have a job, unless you've got a house for someone to go to, then maybe somebody's not going to pick up that job. Or if you don't have the transport infrastructure, you know, particularly in some of the rural areas, then that family won't move, or it's not possible for them to do the job, and they leave.
Yeah. Ali, what about from your perspective in terms of what's going on in Morocco? What are the key things that they're focusing on, all the challenges?
I think for Morocco, I mean, one of the main challenges is the lack of a legislative, decree, like something that will push this local partners to coordinate. I mean, because for right now, I mean, they all doing it like in a voluntary basis. It's not, they need to have a law that is part also of the strategy. It does exist in the strategy, but it's not yet. It's not out yet. So everybody's still waiting for that law that will kind of legalize, I mean, this regional partnership and make it will give it more power, and also will define roles and responsibilities. I think this is really important step towards, towards reaching the potential for vocational education. Also, another challenge is the capacity of this regional partners. I mean, the thing is, like, we have partners coming from all different sectors, from different ministerial delegations in the regions, but they don't have the capacity to be able to define like how they can put into practice these strategies, and how can they define the needs, how they will discuss all the programs existing, how to make things better for the region. So a second point is the building the capacity of these regional partners to be able to be decision makers, because I think that's a really important challenge for the regions. If those 2 points can get sorted out, I'm sure we can reach a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think I think it's in two areas as well. There's, I think, in our research and I think in some of the conversations we've had in countries, is about vertical and horizontal coordination, really, I suppose. And in terms of, there's one bit about who's responsible for what of the TVET system. So, you know, where do curriculum get developed, where do qualifications, how does the funding get organised, and, you know, what gets done at regional level and what gets done at national level. But then you've also got this other aspect which we're talking about, which is about how does the TVET system engage with everything else that's going on in a region that it needs to do, particularly around economic development and the development of industries, but also around social support for people in the regions. And I know that's something that particularly is important in the islands. And I know you mentioned your the Western Islands are Gaelic speaking, so language is an important issue, for example. So it's not just on the economic employer side, but also in having that understanding and knowledge of individuals and how you engage them in the system. So I don't know if you want to talk a bit more about that side of it.
Yes, obviously the local authority has actually made quite a brave stance where it's actually said, you know, Gaelic first. So there's an expectation that all our school pupils will go into Gaelic medium education, and parents will opt out into English education if they want. That puts a challenge on us very much as well, because we've got to look at actually how we deliver our services, our careers information, advice and guidance, how we actually promote, how Gaelic and the language will actually support them to progress in a career or to work as well. But it is part of what we're actually doing through the charter. I think it's really important that we actually learn from other communities where language is really important. I think this particular event shows how we can actually share good practice and actually allow the scope for innovation so that we can pilot work as well.
Yeah, and I think you also highlighted in your presentation the sort of understanding sort of the socio-economic breakdown of the population as well, and identifying what their needs are for an aging population or a young population probably in Morocco's case. The other area I just wanted to bring about was the migration aspect, and I guess a rather stark question: does regional planning matter if actually the people that you're talking about in the region are going to migrate and travel elsewhere, whether that may be elsewhere in Scotland or in Morocco's case it might be elsewhere in the world? Does regional planning still have a role?
If I can come in quickly there, it's just, I think there is regional planning ultimately, its main aim ought to be community empowerment. That actually requires not just the agencies sitting talking to one another, but it's very much about actually liaising with communities and empowering communities. And the more that you involve and discuss things with communities, and the more that you help them to shape provision going forward, it gives them more confidence there about the future. And I think that's what you're actually trying to do. You're trying to sort of involve them in decision making and actually give them confidence that there is a very secure future for them in terms of work and life.
Chris, for the migration, I think for Morocco's case, I think we've been suffering a lot. I mean, some regions, because I mean, as you know, some regions are more developed than others. So I'm just talking maybe about the internal migration, because in our project, the EU-funded project, we are working in the Oriental of Morocco, like in the Oujda area. It's not as developed as Tangiers, but I mean, there's always an issue like here, because they have a lot of young people who are being trained. There's like a lot of training programs for them, but once they graduate, they go to other regions. So the region, I mean, this region, they never benefit from this skilled skilled labor force. It always goes to Casablanca, goes to Tangiers, goes to other regions. So these regions took this in consideration in their regional development plan and just how they can provide these training institutions. They will need to provide also a workplace for them. Like they need to provide also plans to build factories, to build to create this jobs for these young people. So it is an issue in Morocco, and there's a lot is being done to tackle it, you know, for the years coming.
I guess that example brings back the big challenge that we talked about previously, wasn't it? It's the how do regions link to the national agenda, because that is obviously still important for local people if they're going to commute, but also at a regional level, how do you work with the other agencies to develop the economy so that local people can stay in the area where they grow up and perhaps actually really want to be to stay if they have the opportunities. I'm afraid that time has caught up on us, and actually we're just about to go over time. So I think we could talk forever and in a lot of detail about any one of the points we've covered. I hope it just remains me to say a big thank you to you both for spending the time sharing your experiences with us. I hope those of you who've joined us have found it interesting and useful, and maybe stimulated some thoughts, if nothing else. If you do want to get in touch or have any feedback, we don't really have a social media channel, but email us at skills@thebritishcouncil.org. It will influence not only what we might do in the future, but also how we run these events in the future. And just a reminder that we have another one of these events taking place on the 26th of November, which is about what should the college of the future be. So more of a provider's focus. So do join us then. So thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.